So welcome to the Nerd Pod. Let's see. So yeah, I guess start off by telling your story. I know you've been on podcasts before. If you've left anything out in those podcasts and want to say it here, you can feel free to do that. But learning your story, your real estate journey, some tips and tricks, and just kind of go from there.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Giving me free form is probably dangerous. Maybe I should get pigeonholed into these questions.
Yeah, right.
Like, yeah, Adam's going to talk.
You can let loose.
Luckily, I've burned off most of my caffeine at the gym this morning.
Right.
So.
That was a good workout.
It was good.
You got the pump.
Yeah. Probably look like I just stepped out of a sauna now. So.
But you did. That's good.
So I was born in Missoula and raised in Polson, small town north of here on Flathead Lake. And grew up kind of doing Montana stuff and loved living in Montana and decided to go to college in Missoula and pretty much stayed here. Moved here in 2003, pretty much stayed here. I had a short stint of work in Seattle because I graduated college in 2008 into like the worst economy since the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. And I got hired in September 2008, and by I think it was either February or March 2009, they'd laid off like a quarter of the company. I worked at a wealth management company.
Oh, crazy.
So it was just like last in, first out kind of a thing. I was like almost the newest hire, but laid off a bunch of people. And so decided to come back to Missoula and actually spent a summer in Polson,
nice.
Unemployed, which is great.
On the lake?
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, that was ideal.
How could you leave that?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But then I had to get a job again. and the only jobs really at that time in 2009 that were available, like professional type jobs, were commission only, because nobody salary jobs. Like I had a finance degree, theoretically should have been pretty employable, but nobody was hiring, right? I could have gone out and maybe done like a service or retail job or something, and I didn't want to do that. So I actually got into mortgage lending because it was commission only. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't great at mortgage lending, but also it was like probably the toughest market there's ever been for mortgage lending, because
definitely then.
Yeah, people weren't buying too many houses, right? Mm-hmm. And then refinancing was tough because a lot of people didn't have the equity or income to refinance. So it was a really tough market, but it was a good learning experience. And then I got into reverse mortgages, which are like a senior type product, sell like you do for retirees, where they have a bunch of equity and they want to cash some of it out but not have a mortgage payment, or they can get like a monthly stream of income. Essentially, it's kind of like use their house as a bank, but without having to make that payment.
Right.
It's kind of like a HELOC or a home equity loan, but without a payment.
Right.
Amortizes in reverse. And so I did those for a while. Actually rented space in the basement of ERA Lambros. And in the midst of, this whole story, I got married, and my father-in-law was the owner of ERA Lambros. He would come down in the basement where I was renting space and constantly ask me when I was going to start selling real estate. Uh-huh. So he'd bother me about that all the time. Like, when are you going to get into real estate? And at that time, I actually had been elected to the Missoula City Council, so I wasn't that busy doing mortgages. And in 2011, I got a wild hair and decided I wanted to run for city council, which I didn't know much about. I'd studied, some politics in high school. I was super nerdy, but I was on our I think it was called We the People, but I was on it was like Mathletes, but for the Constitution.
Oh, nice. That's sweet.
So we won state, and we got to go to DC and stuff. And
dang.
So I wasn't like completely clueless, but I was pretty close to completely clueless.
That's cool. Very fitting for this too.
Yeah. So I ran for city council, and I unseated an incumbent by 5 votes.
Oh, wow.
And I was 26 years old. So I was that became like a part-time job. I spent plenty of hours doing that. And I was doing the mortgages at the same time. And then, my father-in-law eventually convinced me to get into real estate. So I did that. And I'd saved up a little bit of money because it's really tough to get into real estate if you haven't saved something. But I was still kind of doing some reverse mortgage stuff. And I lost $8,000 my first year of selling real estate.
Oh, really?
So I was really not good at it. And actually what I did at that time is I started buying Zillow leads. So there was only two agents in our market, me and another agent, that were buying Zillow leads at that time, because it was a really new company. Back then, Zillow was like this, have you heard of this website where you can go on and it'll tell you what your house is worth, right? Like they hadn't really become like a search engine for real estate until right around that time. Mm-hmm. So they became more of like a search engine for real estate, and they were selling leads, and they were really, really cheap. And so I started buying those leads.
Yeah, like the people that are like before Google was Google.
Yeah.
And getting those really affordable leads.
Dirt cheap. They
That's
were like
awesome.
Low quality.
Yeah.
But and I wasn't good. Like, I didn't have any sales training. I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know if podcasts existed, but if they did, I didn't listen to them. I didn't read books. We didn't have like a formal training process at the company. Like, I was so bad at working those leads. But eventually, I got better at it and followed up and kind of built my business initially on Zillow leads, which is funny now because I think Zillow leads are complete garbage. But they definitely helped me build my business.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just an early adapter move, right?
Yeah, totally.
Didn't know it at the time, but
yeah, it was just something different. And I think some of the older established agents were like annoyed by it,
Right.
But like when you're,
this young pup coming
in your late 20s, you don't have a big network, and people, you're not who people are going to automatically, even if you start to network, they're looking for more experience. So it was a really good way to get a foot in the door, and then just kind of built the business from there.
And so then that was when did you become the real estate, like, because you started as real estate residential, right? And then kind of converted into more corporate, like commercial stuff.
Yeah. So I started selling real estate in 2013, and because I'd had that finance and mortgage background, I was doing a little bit of commercial. Like if it came in, I'd kind of do it, but it was mostly a residential business at that time. Mm-hmm. And then it became, almost like a 50-50 kind of a thing for me. And my wife, Brittany, owned a property management company with her sister, and they weren't really loving that. And I was busy enough that I really needed an assistant. Mm-hmm. And so I asked Brittany if she'd, get out of that and be my assistant. And so they sold that, and she was my assistant for like 15 minutes, and then immediately became like the top producing real estate agent on our 2-person team. Right. Because she was so good at it, like way better at it than I am. Way, way, way better. Like I'd had, 4 years of experience at that time. She was brand new. I mean, she'd been in property management, and, there's some a little bit of crossover, but she was brand new and immediately like better than me. She had to lean on me for transactional help and some of that stuff. But in terms of sales, she was like immediately way better than me.
That's funny. I hope my wife's watching this, because I want her to start selling marketing, because she'd be way better than me.
Right.
I'm the nerd that can do like production or like, the work. But as far as sales, my wife would be spot on, blow it out of the water. But
totally.
Yeah. We got 4 kids, so I can't really blame her for hanging out. Yeah,
I'm more of like a problem solver, customer service, but I'm not salesy. Not to say that she's salesy like in a negative way, but she's just way more outgoing.
Yeah. Probably better at like relationship building, like very, transactional, why they're with her opposed to
every deal she does, like, she's great friends with the people afterwards, and that's not my personality.
Right.
Just not as like bubbly. And
yeah, that being said, I want to go back in time of was it Sharktopus?
Yeah.
And the emo.
Yeah, I skipped over a portion.
We were
gonna get back to
it. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, how I initially knew about Adam Hertz. But when moving out to Missoula was, the band scene out in Denver brought me, through a lot of weird way here to Missoula from Denver. But that's how I learned about Sharktopus and some of these other band things, and then now I'm playing with people that were in your old bands and stuff. So, yeah, I guess go back in history of the cool emo days.
Yeah. So, I mean, growing up like in the 90s, I graduated high school in 2003. So I still consider myself like a 90s kid, I guess, because,
Oh, yeah,
I guess it bumped into the 2000s. But,
for sure.
we didn't have social media. Like we got the internet in middle school, but it was like boring. You had to dial up and, your parents were yelling at you because you were taking up the phone line. And, so like,
Good days.
yeah, it was like we were bored, right? So I was outside, when the weather was good or whatever, playing soccer or fishing or doing whatever. But I started playing guitar and drums and everything at a pretty young age because it was just a great way to, pass time. And I never took lessons on any of that. I mean, I don't know. There probably weren't like good lessons available in a small town like Polson anyways, but
Right.
just, I just picked up the guitar and started playing it. So I really never learned how to play other people's songs. I only like learned how to write music.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Like I couldn't play covers. I wasn't good enough to play covers. I couldn't read music, none of it. So I just only wrote my own music.
Right.
Which I think there would have been a lot of value in having like more formal training because I would have written better music. But also like it just was, really like got the creative spark going.
That's a good point. Like you're not like overwhelmed with like YouTube, because now it's so easy to learn a cover because you just go on YouTube.
Totally.
But that's actually, I've never thought of that, where it's like too accessible now, where it's like, oh, I'm not good because I saw that person in California, I'm not going to even write music now. But back in the day, we were naive to everything. We're like, we're the best, guitar player in Montana for sure.
and like you could get some tabs online back then, like guitar tabs, but they were always wrong. They were terrible. Like other people just tried to create them. And you're like, no, this doesn't work.
Oh yeah.
And then like you could actually go to like Guitar Center or something, if you were like happened to be in Seattle, right? Like you couldn't get this online, but you could like go to Guitar Center and like buy a tab book.
Yeah.
But like you'd have to buy like a band's whole album, and back then it was like $20. Like I couldn't afford any of that, right? So I just never actually learned how to actually play the guitar. It was all self-taught, but like it ended up being a really positive thing because I played in some bands in high school, and then some in college, and eventually the one that I guess I'll call it successful, because it's weird when you think about success in a band setting. Like it's successful to get like 4 or 5 people together and actually like cohesively write a song. That's pretty hard. Most musicians don't even make it that far.
Right.
And then if you actually play a show locally, like that's a pretty step up in success.
Right.
It's like you don't have to be signed to a major label, in my opinion, knowing what I know about music, to be successful in music. Like if you get 5 dudes together, you write a couple albums and you play hundreds of shows in dozens of states. That's pretty successful, even if you never made a penny doing it or got signed or anything. So that's the level that we made it to, which it was just a lot of fun. And actually, like one of my best business educations was, going on tour and booking all those shows. And
oh, cool. So you were basically like I
was like the band
planner.
dad for the most part. There was 2 of us that were kind of, like we did most of the driving and kind of dealt with the money and booked the tours and so and learned a lot about marketing, like, but free marketing, right? It was all like MySpace and stuff back in those days.
Yeah, things have changed a little bit, huh?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting to think about what it would be like now, like just how good the music could sound because of like the studio quality that you can get with all the plugins and everything. And then just like how much easier it would be with marketing on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. But
which it brings back the point of like being too accessible also could have hurt you. Like, because then it's like people can vet you before you even show up, so they're like, we don't want these guys here. Like they're so accessible now. Like I could find the best musician, if I was having a backyard party right now, like I could probably figure out how to contact them. Now, like back in the day, it was like agent this, agent that, and so like the marketing was obviously completely different, but the accessibility, it's like supply and demand. There's so much supply and everything, which obviously in the real estate world, it's a big supply and demand, but also with bands, also like forming a band, and you're also like a business owner, which you didn't know at the time, that you're like creating revenue from tickets. And you're the dad because you're the business minded, individual that you translate now into, real estate, and, hiring real estate agents underneath you, and building your team. It's just weird because I always mimic, like I used to be a catcher in baseball, and that was like the leadership role of the field because I was the only one that was looking, at the field. So I had to direct people of like, hey, like throw it to second base, like 2-2-2, 1-1-1, 3-3-3, because I was the only one that could see everything. So then I translated that to like, oh, that's leadership skill 101, is like I'm the actual QB because I could see everything.
Totally.
But yeah, then I started realizing that like, oh, okay, everything translated to where I'm at now. It seemed funny at the time, like, bands, ADD, brain, just in everything. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's no doubt, man. I was absolutely not the most talented person in that band. In fact, musically, I was for sure the least talented person in that band. Because we had some really talented people. But like, that I definitely played a leadership role in it. And it's the same way now. Like, I'm not the most talented person on our real estate team.
Right.
But I've got the leadership skills for sure.
It's a great point to tie everything back into, where we're at now, and having kids, right? And gaining their respect's probably the hardest thing. They know how to challenge us. I'm speaking for us because we're both dads, and I'm sure it's the same. But yeah, getting respect from an adult that you pay is usually a good bridge to earning respect. But now it's like, this is their first experiences, with us. So everything is just raw. They don't have any experience. So then it's funny because they know how to challenge us, like, psychologically. It's probably the hardest business, right? Is coming home and like managing your house.
Work is so much easier.
I know,
than parenthood.
I know that's the greatest
My worst
challenge.
Problems at work are like so much
minuscule.
easier.
Yeah, definitely to the emotions.
And
of
I don't
kids
even have teenagers yet.
Right, I know. Pray for us. That's it's gonna be the biggest obstacle because I don't even know my wife's emotions, let alone three girls.
Yeah,
I got a boy that maybe hopefully flattens the curve, but no, that's awesome. I guess that being said, what's like the coolest like leadership? This could be loaded or however you take it, but like, what's the coolest like leadership avenue, or like something that you've learned by trial and error, failures, successes, and everything that like even I could use today?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it definitely works whether you're talking about like being in a band or running a real estate team or being a parent or whatever. It's just like that servant leadership, sounds kind of corny, but like you just can't really be a boss. Like, it just doesn't work to like be barking orders at people,
right?
Whether it's your kids or anything else. Like, it's got to be motivation and understanding, and like, here's our goal. Here's how we get there. How can I help you get there? And so I think just like that servant leadership's the most important thing, because like people just, it's hard to be motivated by somebody who's just like barking orders at you. It's not helpful at all. That's kind of the old school style of being a boss, I think, back in the day. But I'm just there to support everybody on our team. Like, what do you need? How can I help you reach your goals? How can I help you be better? And I think that's just the most important thing you can do as a leader or parent. Or
that's awesome. So yes, almost show respect first to gain respect in return.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's a great point too, because then your employees, once again, everything's so accessible. I'm sure they could get on a different team, but they choose to work with you, which is more earned through your respect, I'm sure.
Yeah, nobody on our team is captive by any means, right? They could go work for another team. They could go independent. They could work at a different brokerage. But we try to show them value. And so it's almost more of a partnership, which is different than more of like an employer-employee relationship.
Right.
So real estate's a little different. We now have 10 agents on our team and 2 admins. And then we our team's sort of an interesting setup because it's basically family. So it's me and my wife Brittany, her twin sister Carly, my sister Kristen, our niece Madison.
Oh, cool.
And we're all like fairly what I'd call like independent agents that sort of benefit from shared marketing and that sort of thing, you know. But then we have another portion of the team that Jana Pummel is essentially the manager of, which is our relationship with Hayden Homes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Regional production builder out of Bend, Oregon. They build about 2,000 homes a year. And so Jana and her team solely represent Hayden Homes.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah. So there's 5 of them now total.
Yeah.
And then they have their own admin, and then the rest of us, you know, have a separate admin.
That's cool.
So kind of like I have no, I never had a goal to build a big team. I still don't have a goal to build a big team. I don't want more people on our team, but it's basically family,
right.
And it's Hayden Homes.
Right.
So both of those things I do want to, you know, continue to boost up and make sure everyone's really successful. But I was like zero interest in adding anything beyond those
right.
2 responsibilities.
Yeah, I think the first time we worked out like 2 years ago, you only had, I think, 1. And I think it was, you were like dabbling in an employer or something, or employment. But yeah, it's a lot of changes because then once again, you're building your family within professional and, you know, casual, if you will. And it's hard to turn things off and on. Yeah. But I feel like with your like mentorship and your leadership skills that you can probably turn it off like a light switch.
And the attempt, like, you know, building a real estate team, like if you talk to most people that build a real estate team, they find out that it's not really a profitable venture. Like it's a pretty bad business model in general. If you just set out to build a team, you know, the way that we kind of built it was like, oh, we're too busy. We can't work 90 hours a week.
Right.
So we need another person to take some overflow. And that's how we first started to kind of build a team. But then when it kind of became a family thing, like I make no attempt whatsoever to make any money, any profit off of any of the family members on our team.
Oh, cool.
I'm just trying to make it break even, which is that can be tough, right? Because like, you know, you might like sometimes, you know, if somebody sells like a $50,000 lot and I've paid $400 for photos or something, like I'm going to lose money on that, even if the agent makes money on it.
Right.
But then at other times, you know, I'll make money. So my attempt with them is to just like break even and help them build their career. And then on the Hayden side, obviously, like there's some profit motive there, but you know, we definitely want them all to be very well paid and happy, and they have to be because you know, they're not like stuck on the team.
Right.
You know, they can go do their own thing if they want to.
Well, and in your case, it's very, I think you're doing that because you choose to do that, where, you know, with the finance background, I'm sure you knew exactly the numbers that you're going to break even on. Yeah. So you choose to do that opposed to just like, oh, no, I didn't make money at the end of the year, which I tend to do because I'm not a finance guy. I'm not, stay way far from that. But
I definitely track revenue by the month. I'm not great at tracking expenses, you know, that closely, but I have a good feel for how things are going for the most part and kind of make adjustments. But yeah, it's an interesting, you know, I guess I accidentally created a successful real estate team.
Yeah. That's same story. We're very similar minded. I think I threw shit at the wall and it, you know, ended up sticking somehow. Totally. And it's like, how do we become the solution to the problems, right? Like everyone does marketing, but you know, how can I make a better website, or how can I make the same website for a lot more affordable price, or like, you know, which problems did I not like? Restaurant background, I'm like, marketing's, you know, pretty scammy. How do I make it less scammy for these restaurants? You know, Panda Express, like Marriott's, even like, why are you paying $4,000 just because you're Marriott? Like, they're not doing shit. And so then it's like, okay, and back to like real estate too. So then helping Remax out in Denver, it's like their office fees are just insane. I'm like, what are you paying that for? Like, obviously it's a long story, I'm sure, but they were getting nothing out of it. So then it's like, why don't you just promote yourself through your own channels? And then it's like, okay, that works really well, because then people's office fees, you know, as you probably know, real estate is completely like still behind. You know, you still pay for mail outs and like, you know, printer paper. Like, and so nowadays it's like everything could be self-promoted with, you know, some direction within the organization. That's kind of like, obviously the future is how to promote your own self, like get your own Google page, like very blanket statement, easy stuff that a lot of real estate people don't even know, like what is a Google page?
Yeah.
Like, and so it's like, you know, directing them into that sense too, like we talk about marketing, where it's like, yeah, do you need that? Do you need this?
Right.
Probably don't need that. And then, you know, trimming off the fat, but it's like there's so much that it can be exhausting.
Yeah, real estate brokerages in general, like there's been a lot of changes in the market, and they really have to show value nowadays. And I would say, like, so our brokerage is awesome. We're at ERA Lambros, and it's a great partnership, the support that we get. And, you know, obviously, you know, we sell enough real estate that we could go out and start our own brokerage and be like probably in the top 10 brokerages in Missoula, if not, like, I don't even know, maybe the top 5, I don't know. But, you know, we could be a brokerage, just our team. But I see value in being at ERA Lambros. But on the on like the franchise level, where you're at, you know, you're an ERA or a Remax or whatever, like, I think those companies are struggling to show value, like the amount that we pay in franchise fees versus, you know, what we get back in support from ERA. It's, you know, it's a ripoff at this point for us.
Right.
And so there's been a lot of new franchises coming out that maybe have a little bit better value proposition. But yeah, that's an interesting part of the market where I still think that there's like a lot of room for disruptors with really good franchises. And it's interesting because real estate tends to attract a lot of investment and a lot of startups and everything, you know, mostly on the marketing side. But like, it's interesting to me that still nobody's really done a great job of cracking the code on franchises and like actually doing a really good job of having a fantastic real estate franchise.
Yeah, that's a great point. And obviously maybe a conversation we have too, because I mean, my background's franchises, and knowing, you know, everything does translate. You know, the franchise is like the politics, I think, of business, where it's like they're very, you know, structurally sounded. They just want to please the board, or, you know, there has to be a in the middle route, or like Chick-fil-A, right? It's franchise, but they have the best business model that helps communities. Same with like Shields.
Yeah.
So like those franchise models work the best because they actually give a shit about their community, and they like aren't just corporate. They're just like, you know, sure, we have a lot of money, but we actually help.
Yeah. Totally.
And yeah, I haven't really seen...
on the real estate side, they have to support their agents, and they'll all say that they're super agent centric, but really like a financially successful franchise is one that's going to convince a broker owner to sign up, because that's who signs the franchise agreement, right? I don't sign it as an agent. If I don't like being part of ERA or EXP or Keller Williams or whatever, that's my problem. Like the broker decides that. They do a really good job, I think, of adding value to brokers and like whining and dining them and making them think that franchise is fantastic. And you know, kind of show less value to the actual agents themselves.
Right.
But it also depends on kind of what level you're at. Like the stuff that I was missing as a new agent is now like just there as a, like ERA's got just great CRM, and they've got like great, you know, presentation materials and all the stuff that I didn't have when I was a new agent. So like as a new agent, you can plug into some of these franchises and it's just incredible.
Right.
But then when you're to the point where we've really built our own brand, you know, it feels like we're sending a lot of money out the door that we're not getting back in value.
Right.
But
yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, that was one of the biggest pain points with franchises and restaurants was why do we have to pay for a $200 box of fries when I could go get it from Costco for $40?
Totally.
Yeah, so it's like you know, I think there needs to be some like revolution of how franchise models work instead of
be a partnership.
Yeah, right. And they actually have to give a shit about their employees, you know, everything. It's pretty obvious, right? Like just be a good person and build your your franchise around that. It's pretty
if
simple.
you don't support your franchisees, it's not going to turn out well. It's like the Quiznos model. Like they just decided to squeeze their franchisees to the point where like they just all went out of business. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, well, you boosted your profit margin for a couple of years, and now everybody's out of business, and now you don't make money either.
Yeah, funny. I was almost talking about, I helped them out in Denver. I helped a lot of those franchisees And then also like a turn of events at a different corporate franchise. All the Quiznos corporate came over to where I was working. And so I'm like, oh no, they're starting the same thing over, which I don't know if I should share here, but
What company?
yeah, which company?
Don't need to get sued here.
Yeah, on a dinky podcast, but it's good to know that it's still happening. So they're good, bad, and ugly. I've worked for them all. Like Panda Express actually was like one of the best. I don't even think they're public. I think they're still privately owned. But at least when I was, they were still privately owned. But it was really cool. They kind of included the Chinese culture with their, their execs, and they pay extremely well for, a fast casual establishment. But it was really interesting, like to actually genuinely feel loved, if you will, by like a family outside of your family and its work, but there's definitely franchises that do and don't. But yeah, if you want to scale too, it's kind of that equilibrium of like, okay, what's next, and how do you not go bankrupt trying to franchise? Like I've been thinking about that, like how do I scale from where I'm at now in marketing? It's like I think I've capped out where I can do all the work myself, and then it's like, do I rely on AI? Do I rely on these AI assistants? I have to train them the same way I would a person. But how autonomous do I need things, or do I lose the romance of customer service? Like I could automate everything nowadays, and me being a nerd in coding and like actually knowing how to prompt them is what I guess I kind of say where I get the human side to AI is just the prompt master. I'm asking the right questions.
Totally.
But yeah, everything can be automated at the end of the day. It's not a face-to-face. Like this isn't AI, and that's never going to be lost. So that's why I started doing, podcasts and trying to get more comfortable in front of video. Even though I think it's still a little cringy, but like it was definitely a lot more cringy in the beginning. At least I can kind of make it seem very professional with some lighting and stuff. But yeah, it's like I don't care, because that's the future, is still showing your face and being, customer face to face.
For sure. It's a similar issue in real estate, which is like, where I got in 2017, I think I was selling like, $12 million a year in real estate. Average, median home price then was probably like in the mid 200 range or something. So that was like a lot of transactions. Like I was working way too many hours. I didn't have an assistant. Like that was my cap, right? And when you hit that cap, okay, so I brought my wife Brittany on, right? That expands our ability to service more business and not work as many hours and everything. So the way that like you can really adjust when you hit your ceiling in real estate is first you should get an admin. Like there's ways to start to leverage that. But then if you get past that point, then it's like you really have two options to scale your business at that point. You either start a team, which is really difficult and probably not what I would suggest to most people, or you got to figure out how to increase your average sales price. Like that's the absolute best way. If you want to make more money, but you have just a limited amount of hours. And in large part, that's why I shifted almost entirely to commercial real estate, because my average sales price is way higher now. But even like, Brittany and I have that conversation a lot. Like, she's definitely like giving business away to other people on the team now because she's too busy. And so it's like, okay, how do we, get you into this new neighborhood so that you can increase your average sales price? Because that's the way to scale in real estate if you're not, wanting to scale via building a bigger team.
Yeah. And that, I guess that being said, like you don't really understand it until you're in it, but like, how much you can't really adjust the price. Like, as a salesperson in real estate, you can't be like, oh, because it's me, I'm going to sell this house, for more because it's all appraised and everything. So basically, I mean, dumbing it down, I don't know anything really. I had a real estate license at one point, and now it's all different. That was 2013. I did it for shits and giggles, honestly. But things have changed, insane amounts. But, like when you go to a real estate agent, what is like the biggest purpose of doing so? Because I know a lot of people like me that don't really understand real estate nowadays. It's like, why don't I just, appoint myself? Obviously I know not to do that, but why don't you just appoint yourself? Or, there's even that talk of like, get a lawyer in real estate. You could, their hourly fees are cheaper than, percentages, but like real estate experts, I guess, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're selling, if you're on the listing side, a significant part of the value is like having your agent, if you've got a good agent who can really dial in your marketing, making sure that your property is presented correctly to the market, making sure that it's priced in a way that's going to be most beneficial to you. Sometimes that might be pricing it right. Sometimes that might be underpricing it a little bit to create even more demand. Sort of depends on the market. Helping you stage it. Maybe they take a look at it and they're like, oh, actually, maybe you should subdivide a chunk of this off before it hits the market. So like just,
Nice.
Value maximization. I think if you've got a really good agent, they can help you do that. And then because we all use the multiple listing service, the MLS, it's getting fed out to, everywhere on the internet, not just Zillow, but it's getting fed out to other brokerages too who we cooperate with and share part of the commission with. So I think as a seller, it is like an absolute no-brainer to hire a good real estate agent. It's going to pay for itself, for sure, because you just can't get that exposure on your own. Even if you're, pretty experienced, right? Like if I was a seller if I owned a second home in wherever, Florida or something, 100% I'm going to hire a good real estate agent in that market because I know that it's going to pay for itself. On the buyer side, again, it's more of like an advisory role, right? So they can certainly help you with negotiation, tell you if a property's overpriced, like maybe help you get a better deal on it. But a lot of people are savvy. Like if you buy and sell a lot of real estate, you might be savvy enough to do that on your own, right? But the things that an attorney won't do for you is like link you up with a really good inspector. And then when things kind of maybe don't turn out right, get the other subcontractors in there to figure out what should we negotiate off this price? How can we get a better deal? How can we make this work better? So there's a lot of advisory role. That's something though that like if you're a super experienced buyer, there are buyers, that I know in the market that I've worked with a lot that absolutely could save some money probably by like just having an attorney do the paperwork and like they know enough about the due diligence and all that they could do it on their own. But it's a pretty limited number of people that are that savvy.
Right.
Like even again, if I went outside of my market, if I was like going to buy a second home and out of state, I'd still hire a buyer's agent because like, okay, maybe it's Florida. Like Florida probably has termites or something. We don't have termites. I've never done a termite inspection. So there's just a lot of like blind spots that are helpful, I think. But that said, like any industry, there's people who are valuable and people who aren't. And so if you've had a transaction with a real estate agent and thought, gosh, like that, I don't feel like I got my money out of that or whatever. Like it's totally fair. You may not have.
Right.
Next time you got to do a little more due diligence and find out, who the best is for your specific circumstances.
Yeah.
And even on the commercial side, like I've got clients who buy and sell a ton of property and they're, very sharp and in large part could kind of do it on their own. But I'm providing a consulting service in those cases where like I've got a deal going on right now where he's an incredible real estate investor, very experienced, but I know that the value that I'm adding to this deal that we're going to do is, worth over 7 figures for sure. And he's going to pay me, I don't know, 6 figures or something. It's going to be worth it because I'm adding a lot of value to it.
Right.
But there's other people who take the job as just being a paperwork shuffler and you're not going to add a whole lot of value.
That's a great point. I mean, and that once again, everything they were talking about, like my ADD brain's like translating it to everything, right? Like back to the band, back to mortgages, politics, city council, everything. And then it's like, okay, in marketing too, I'm kind of more, I think you hire me, honestly, to make a website is extremely easy. For some marketers, it's still not easy. I don't know why, but they're like old school. I haven't met really any Missoula website builder that can actually produce a good website that the client can actually control themselves. So that's why I kind of created that solution of like, okay, you can manage it yourself and you can double click the text and change it yourself. It's that easy.
Just intuitive.
Or you could ask me to do it in like 2 seconds. But it's the consulting kind of structure of marketing that I'm the one reading the terms and conditions in Google's updates and like I'm actually how do you even get listed on AI? Because obviously that information is coming from other sources. So now it's just an SEO tool, is really what it is. It's just a searching tool that you ask questions and it pumps it in like more intricately from every source. And so how do you get your business to show on AI, and who are they pulling this information from is kind of where I'm at, where it's like, and I don't know how to sell that yet. So I'm glad you said that, because it is more of like the consulting piece of paying me a retainer every month just to get the knowledge of what's happening. Is SEO dead, like everyone says, or how do you implement it so that it actually works in your business and tailored to, the trending? Because a lot of marketers just like, oh, I don't do that, or like, oh, I don't do that. Or, if you're consulting it, you can actually realize that a lot of it is, pretty, you could do it yourself. But yeah, I'm the one that's like actually focused on it every day, like opposed to you in real estate. It's like, I'm not thinking you're going to read the same things I'm reading. And I'm not going to read even close to the things you're reading. But, I mean, it would be beneficial for both of us if you learned marketing and if I learned how to invest in real estate.
Totally.
But yeah, that's like at the end of the day, it's like my time should be just focused on this and then
on what you're good at. Totally. And I've heard people say this, like, because I've done real estate deals. Some real estate deals you're totally underpaid on, and some of them, somebody might, like, if they were crunching the hours on some of these bigger commercial deals, it might be like, dude, Adam, you made like $3,000 an hour on this deal. The way that I've heard it explained is, I'm not getting paid by the hour, I'm getting paid for the years.
Right.
Like, I spent a lot of time learning this stuff and becoming an expert at it. And there are nuggets of value that, it might only take me 10 minutes to tell you this thing, but it could be worth like $50,000 to you for me to tell you that.
Right.
And you're not going to find it on Google. You're not going to find it in AI.
Right.
And so you're paying me for the years that it took me to build that experience to give you this nugget.
That's a great point. That's like the whole lawyer comment where I said I should have been a lawyer. I didn't even think about it. Like they are only paid by the hour. So it's like, obviously the retainer lawyers probably like they work themselves up to that point. But
like a litigator or something. But like I don't want to get paid by the hour, right? I want to get paid by the value that I add to somebody. I love solving problems. That's why I got into like city council. I was in the state legislature at one point. It's all problem solving, and I just love solving problems. And I think the more difficult problems you can solve, the more efficiently you can solve them, the more money you're going to make, no matter what industry you're in. Like that's the world of an entrepreneur, is how can you add value and solve other people's problems? And, the bigger, better, faster you can do that, the more money you're going to make. You know?
No, I mean, I think that's the best place to stop this, but that's like the best quote that I'm probably going to rewatch this. It's actually, I'm enjoying this a little too much. It's already 42 minutes. So
no worries.
Time flies when you have good conversations, but I appreciate you being here and sharing all that knowledge. It's a lot of good nuggets that I'll definitely use in my life. So hopefully somebody watches this too.
Sweet. We'll have to get into real estate development next time, because it's a whole nother world.
Let's do it. I love it. I'll just ask one question and then you just let it rip. Because I think, I'm so interested in the world that you're in. But sometimes I'm too, like when we play poker and stuff, some nights it's like, everyone's talking about finance, real estate, all this stuff that I try to stay out of. Like nobody's a marketer there, or else I'd have some, conversation. But it's really cool just like being humbled in the sense of like, I don't know what the hell, even to start. But when you translate things of like, once again, like, band, music, everything, then it's like, okay, we do have the same experience somewhat, but one's more hyper-focused on...
Yeah, it all kind of ties together.
Yeah.
And we could do a 40-minute episode just on the Shark Divest.
Yeah. No, I'd love it.
If I can remember.
Let's start a series. This would be sick.
I need to bring in like a couple of the other dudes to remember some of the stories.
That'd be dope. Yeah. I'm always here, so whenever you're available, you're busier than I am, so whenever you want to stop in, I'd love to talk.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. Yeah.